Hokage I'll become stronger when I'm fishing. Chapter 361-380. Chapter 361. Comprehensive Crushing, the Terrifying 8 Gods Pirates. Kaido was beaten with no power to fight back, but Yagami Kingta was beaten heartily. He hadn't been so comfortable for a long time, and he fully developed his fighting power. Fortunately, Kaido's physique is strong enough to withstand his beatings. Otherwise, this battle will be like the previous battles. Without any strength, the opponent will be completely defeated. The stronger the strength, the harder it is to find that blood and passion in battle. It has to be said that it is a pity for those who love fighting. Yagami Kingdu vaguely felt the feeling of a bald head in a certain world. Boom! Another punch fell. Kaido crossed his arms and blocked above his head. His aura of armament had been stimulated to the limit, and the two forces were constantly clashing in the void. Yagami Kingdu's arm shook slightly, accompanied by a loud roar. His fist slammed down hard and pushed hard. Bang! Kaido's resistance has been defeated. The ground beneath his feet collapsed in a shattered manner. Radius of hundreds of meters turned into a sinkhole, and Kaido fell into the ground, and the soil and stones splashed everywhere. Cough! Kaido's mouth and nose are overflowing with blood. Master Kaido. Drought Jack, one of the 3 disasters, was the closest to the location. He looked at this scene, and a few strands of blood appeared in his eyes. In his eyes, Kaido is almost invincible. No one can match Kaido in a one-on-one battle. He was beaten so badly by Yagami Kingta. You're distracted. And at this moment, Fujitora's voice came from the top of his head. I saw Fujitora close his eyes. The sword in his hand had already pressed down on Jack's head at some point, and a terrifying gravity slammed down. Jack's face changed drastically, and he roared and tried to resist, but it was too late. I only felt that the whole head had received a heavy blow, and it instantly became groggy, and the neck also made a clicking sound. When the power of the gravity knife dissipates. Jack struggled to climb out of the sinkhole in the collapsed earth, only to feel that everything in front of him was spinning. After staggering for 2 steps, he couldn't hold on anymore, his eyes rolled, and he passed out. One of the 3 disasters of the Beast Pirates, Drought Jack. Defeat. Jack's defeat also triggered a series of chain reactions, and another 3 disasters not far from here. Watching this scene, his complexion changed greatly. His tricks soon showed flaws. Who fought against him was Shiryu Rain, the captain of the 2nd and 2nd Division. Shiryu of Rain's current strength has truly reached the level of a general, almost on par with Fujitora. Flaw in front of him, there is only one fate. Sigh, the blade pierced through his chest. A scorching power spread from the blade, from the internal organs to the flesh and skin, and in the blink of an eye it burned his entire body to pieces. On his face disappeared forever. I didn't expect you to solve it faster than me. Turned his head to look at Fujitora, and let out a breath of smoke. Fujitora also put the stick knife into the wooden stick, put it down gently, touched the back of his head, smiled honestly, and said, "It's just a fluke." Shiryu of Rain snorted in his heart. He knew Fujitora's character. He was humble on the outside, and he also had his arrogance inside, otherwise, he wouldn't have been pressing him until now. Philo reminds you. 3 things to read, collect, recommend and share. Chapter 362. The Foundation of the Top of the Sea. In today's 10,000 Kingdoms, he no longer has any idea of replacing the position of Yagami Sudo, but the position held by Fujitora, he still hopes to grab it. With the defeat of the 2-3 disasters, the battlefield of the thieves and the remnants of the party also encountered major problems. Don't look over there. Rod's dangling voice sounded from Smoothie's ear. He did not know when he appeared by Smoothie's side, and a bullet shot precisely at Smoothie's body. Smoothie sensed Rod's movements, but because of distraction, and Rod's shock wave was already strong, she could not avoid it. He forced his body back a little. Shit! The bullet passed through her chest, leaving 444 blood holes. The severe pain made Smoothie let out a cry. Although he immediately used his ability to twist that part of the flesh and blood, and plug the wound, he inevitably fell into a rout. Rhodes' figure flashed, and he had already taken advantage of the situation to come to Smoothie, and threw 3 punches in a row. Smoothie barely avoided it. Bang! Rhodes kicked Smoothie in the lower abdomen, kicked him upside down, and spit out a mouthful of blood, insisting to stand up. But at this moment, a knife light flashed. Kai! Smoothie's body was dismantled into 8 pieces in an instant, and under Jeers's ability, his arms, legs, and feet, as well as his head and torso, were all cut open. Although no real damage was taken, it also lost the ability to fight. Hey, don't meddle in my battles, you bastard. Rhodes looked at Gertz next to him in dissatisfaction. It's broken, beast. Another 4 Emperor pirates, that's it. Under the leadership of Yagami Kangdu, their progress is truly unstoppable, and this seems to have formed a trend that swept the world. Just like the Pirate King Roger back then. In the beginning, Roger also fought with the Whitebeard pirates, Golden Lion Shiki and others, and even fell into a disadvantage for a time, and was cornered by Garp several times. But he survived every time he became a victor, and every victory laid the foundation for him to climb to the top of the sea. It can be said. From a certain point on, the Roger pirates have been unstoppable. Sweeping the entire sea, no matter the Golden Lion or the Whitebeard, they must retreat before the Roger pirates, and if they fight to the death, they will definitely be defeated by the Roger pirates. One Piece. Gilles also spoke faintly. Yes. Today's Yagami Kangdu, this trend sweeping the world, is no different from One Piece, because neither the Whitebeard pirates nor the red-haired pirates can stop Yagami Kangdu's footsteps. Wanting to go to Ralph Drew, wanting to collect the history of the road signs, is just a casual thing. The trend is done. No more. There is no stopping it. It's a pity that our captain is not interested in One Piece. Goldbag smiled, he narrowed his eyes, and there was a deep color in his eyes, looking far behind, whereas the direction of the Red Continent, and also the direction of the world government, the Holy Land Mary Joa. The Beast Pirates were also defeated by them. Chapter 363, Black Charcoal Orochi, defeated. The Whitebeard pirates were defeated a long time ago, and no matter how strong the red-haired pirates were, they could no longer be their enemies. Now in the entire sea, the only one still standing in front of the Yagami Kangdu and in front of the Yagami Kangdu pirates is only one power, the world government. Far away. The only remaining 3 plagues are still fighting the hurricane incarnation. Damn. He gritted his teeth, his face was hideous, and he almost doubted life. Because this hurricane incarnation has an absurdly low IQ and almost only possesses a little simple thinking, but he was blocked. But a mental retard. You bastard, what the hell are you? He shattered a mass of wind blades with one punch, gritted his teeth and roared at the hurricane incarnation. Wind. The hurricane avatar replied, and at the same time, he continued to build up his energy and attack the opponent. The last 3 disasters felt that they might have been beaten to death before they were beaten to death. It was obvious that the opponent was mentally retarded, but he couldn't win the fight. This feeling was the most painful. And at this moment, a figure appeared on both his left and right sides. The Sword of Fire. Gravity Knife. Fujitora and Shiryu of Rain were both calm, drawing their swords at the same time. 2 attacks came from both sides, squeezing the last 3 disasters in the center. At the same time, the incarnation of the hurricane also screamed, shrinking the sky, bombarding it from above, and pouring it into the head of the 3 disasters. Ha ha, it's like falling into a meat grinder. Under the combined attack of the combat power of the 3 generals, the last of the 3 disasters was crushed into countless blood-red crystals, which were scattered all over the place without even screaming. This scene, even Rhodes in the distance could not help but be speechless. It's miserable. Fortunately, he is a member of the 8 Gods Kangdu pirates, not a member of the Beasts pirates. Rhodes couldn't help but think happily. With the collapse of the 3 disasters and the remnants of the thieves, the last Wano country general, the Black Charcoal Serpent, also retreated. Day Tiger Spear. Hyrding roared loudly, and countless thunder lights intertwined, turning into a huge white tiger roaring, blasting right in front of the Black Charcoal Snake. Black Charcoal Snake barely blocked it, but the whole person staggered back. Today's Hyrding has fully developed the power of the 8 gates of Dunjia, and his strength has even surpassed that of Rhodes, reaching the level of Fujitora and Shiryu of the Rain. In front of him, the Black Charcoal Snake is obviously not an opponent. Crackling. After the Black Charcoal Serpent was repelled with a single blow, Hyrding stopped his steps, not immediately. Shot, but suspended in the air, in the interweaving of thunder and lightning, just staring at the Black Charcoal Snake so coldly. The Black Charcoal Snake gritted its teeth and looked at Hyrding in the air, but then his hair rose up, and he looked sideways subconsciously, only to see a figure walking slowly. The captain of the 3rd Division of Wanguo, Rhodes. He looked in the other direction, and saw a man carrying a very long knife. His eyes were calm and indifferent, and he also walked slowly towards this side. Captain of the 4th Division of the Nations, Jeers. Cold sweat poured out of his forehead. He turned his head slightly, looked behind him from the corner of his eyes, and saw 2 figures walking over, one from the left and the other. There were traces of charcoal on the ground, and the other person was leaning on a wooden stick and walking steadily. Philo reminds you, 3 things to read, collect, recommend and share. Chapter 364, 4 Emperors and 100 Beasts Kaido, Final Defeat. Captain of the 1st Division of the World, Fujitora smiled. Captain of the 2nd Division of the World, Shiryu of the Rain. It's over. Goldbag also walked over from a distance, followed by Nina, and finally the hurricane turned into a small tornado and came to the sky. 666 divisions, 6 captains. Surround the Black Charcoal Serpent in the center. The Black Charcoal Snake's face has already changed. There is no trace of blood, and there is only one emotion left in his heart, that is despair. Boom, boom, boom. Iori Kingdu bangs every punch out. All the beasts Kaido could not resist. Flying backwards, his physical strength has begun to consume a lot. From the sky to the ground, and from the ground to the coast, a town was completely shattered, and even the entire Julie area was completely shattered. Ultimately, Yagami Kingdu swung out a fist, bombarded Kaido's body, knocked Kaido's whole body upside down and flew thousands of meters away, smashed the ground into a huge horizontal ditch thousands of meters, and then everything was completely returned. Silence. 4 Emperors and 100 Beasts Kaido. Final defeat. From now on, there will be only 3 emperors left in the 4 emperors. It seems that it is over. Judging that Kaido was no longer moving, he got up, and Fujitora and others who had completely defeated the beast pirates, all looked here. With Yagami Kingdu's current strength, it is not difficult to break Kaido's immortality and kill the bottom, but it is a waste to kill Kaido in this way. It was Yagami Kanto's plan. Anyway, this battle is finally over. Or should I say, the speed is incredible, and the speed makes many people have a vaguely dreamy and unreal feeling. The dignified 4 Emperor pirates were destroyed just like that. It's not that the beast's pirates are weak, but the strength of the 8 gods Kingdu pirates is too strong, too strong. General trend has been completed, and it is unmatched to push the sea horizontally. Even if the red-haired pirates appear in Wano now, they can continue to fight again and defeat the second 4 Emperor pirates. The territory has been expanded by half. Goldbag grinned. Because Yagami Kingdu is not interested in becoming the pirate king or anything like that, and killing the beast pirates means that they are almost going to really meet the world government, this behemoth that has ruled the world for 800 years. The pirate king Roger of the previous era, or the pirate rocks of the previous era, or a character from a long time ago, no one can shake the world government. But, under the command of today's Yagami Kingdu, it seems that it is not too far away to defeat the world government. Stopped. At the edge of Pickle Town, both Aju and Ahe noticed that the constant earthquake had disappeared, and when they looked up, the battlefield in the distance was already a mess. The minds of both of them are a little blank at the moment. They saw that the leader of the givers was really beaten and killed like chopping melons and vegetables. They saw that the 3 disasters of the 100 Beast Pirates were hanged and beaten by Fujitora and others. They saw that the general of the Wano country, the Black Charcoal Serpent, was surrounded by the last Fujitora and others, and let out an unwilling roar, and in the end it was extremely miserable. It turned out to be true. The 100 Beast Pirates were wiped out. Chapter 365, The Unstoppable Pirates. For both of them, there is a feeling of unreality like dreaming, and even if it is a dream, they can't have such a dream. After an unknown amount of time, Ahi took a deep breath and slowly recovered. She looked at the battlefield from a distance and spoke slowly, with a deep tone in her tone. Because Wano country is closed to the country. After the destruction of the Beast Pirates, it took a while for the news to reach the Navy and the world government. The entire Navy and the world government were shaken up and down. How is it possible? Admiral Waring states, standing in the office, stood up against the table with a face full of disbelief. Joke. The Beast Pirates were actually wiped out without a sound. The overall combat power of the Beast Pirates today is still above the Whitebeard Pirates and the Red-Haired Pirates. The second largest pirate force after the Yagami Kingdo Pirates. Moreover, the captain of the beasts, Kaido, is in existence known as an undead monster. Their navy has captured Kaido many times, but they have tried every means to kill them, so they can only watch the other party escape and forcefully leave. But, in just a few short days, the news that the 100 Beasts Pirates were completely destroyed by the 8 Gods Kingdo Pirates came out. Pirates. Sitting on the sofa in the office, Kizaru was lost for a while, and it took a long time before he spoke slowly. Although his tone was still a little condescending, his demeanor was unprecedentedly serious, and his heart was also greatly impacted. They are still here, discussing. Black brought the hot potato of Fire Fist Ace over. What should we do? Should we fight with Whitebeard or not? As a result, the Yagami Kingdo Pirates have silently defeated the beasts. The pirate group is destroyed. The atmosphere in the entire conference room is gloomy. Even Waring States slowly sat back in the chair, not knowing what to say for a while. The rise of the 8 Gods Kingdo is so swift and violent, so beyond expectations. In just a few years, he has grown into one of the 4 emperors, and has built the 8 Gods Kingdo Pirates into a behemoth that roams the sea. It was easy to destroy the other 4 emperors. Reason why it is easy to say is because they have not received any news in advance, which means that the Yagami Kingdo Pirates are not dispatched by the entire army. In this case, 100 Beasts Pirates still can't resist. Today's Yagami Kingdo Pirates has truly become a lingering cloud, pressing on everyone's heads. It was fine before today, but after today, Yagami Kingdo takes over Kaido's territory and annexes some of Kaido's forces. Even if the naval headquarters is used to fight the Yagami Kingdo Pirates, I'm afraid there may not be much chance of winning. Even in the era of One Piece Roger, the pirate power has never grown to this level. Even Roger One Piece, there is no such strong oppression brought by Yagami Kingdo. This is a new era, indeed a new one. The era belongs to the era when the 8 Gods Kingdo respects only one person. Everyone else has to step aside under the edge. The Chiwahai can't do it, nor can the 4 emperors. Now, we can still say the Red Hair Pirates and the Whitebeard Sea. The pirate group, is it side by side with the Yagami Kingdo Pirates, or to put it another way? Can anyone stop Yagami Kingdo from becoming one piece? Feilu reminds you. 3 things to read, collect, recommend, and share. Chapter 366. Angry 5 Old Stars. No. No one can stop it. Even though Yagami Kingdo has not yet gone to Ralph Drew, his current power and current strength can already be regarded as the uncrowned king, the one piece overlooking the sea. The conference room was silent, and no one made a sound for a long time. At the same time, within the world government, the same violent earthquake as the naval headquarters was also taking place. From high-level officials, to the army's commander-in-chief, Gang Kuo Kong, to the 5 old stars, all of them almost fell off their chairs. How is it possible? With such a big movement, I only learned after the end that the people in the intelligence department are all rice buckets. The angry roar of the 5 old stars came from the power. They panicked. Panicked for the first time. Even if the 8 gods Kangdu rushed to the Holy Land and held the highest power in the world government, they did not panic, and they still sat at the core of this power, sitting safely. But now, they could feel that the position was unstable. Destroy the 100 beast pirates in a very short period of time, and the whole process is still silent. This shows that the power of the 8 gods Kangdu pirates has become so powerful that it is almost terrifying, completely surpassing the other 4. Above the Emperor pirates, the beast pirates are gone, but Kaido may not be killed. A 5 old star forced himself to calm down and spoke slowly. The person next to him shook his head and said, since he has attacked Kaido, there must be a countermeasure. Don't forget that he is the one who defeated Whitebeard head-on. The emotions of the 5 people all seemed a little low. After destroying the beast pirates, and then taking over Kaido's territory, he has a large part of his power, and the Navy headquarters may be difficult to suppress. Kaido lost so fast, so suddenly. Catch everyone by surprise. Damn, how could Kaido lose so fast? It's pointless to send troops to deal with them at this time, and there is still a troublesome thing on the Navy side. The sword-wielding Wu Laoxing leaned on the sword and gritted his teeth. The person next to him took a deep breath and said, since it's too late to stop it, we can only find a way to minimize the problem. Let the Navy do it, publicly execute it, and bring Whitebeard over. The only way is to take advantage of him to take over Kaido's territory and eliminate Whitebeard first, so that the Navy can free up all its energy to deal with Yagami Kangta alone. The 5 old stars quickly made a decision. So, After half a day, a piece of news spread all over the sea, setting off a 12-level hurricane and earthquake all over the world. 10 days later, the public execution of the Whitebeard pirates, the captain of the 2nd and 2nd Division, Fire Fist Ace will be executed in the Navy headquarters. The news came out. World is in an uproar. On the surface, it looks like it's just a notice of execution, but anyone with a little more dexterity knows that this notice of execution is almost a declaration of war on the front of Whitebeard. The Navy finally wants to attack the 4 emperors. Now. In his hand and spoke with a trembling voice. Since the era of the great pirates, the 4 emperors have always ruled the sea. Although there have been the rise and fall of Yagami Kangdu during the period, the Navy has never made any bold moves on the pirates at the level of the 4 emperors. Or rather, the Navy's many battles against the 4 emperors have all ended in failure. Otherwise, the situation in the sea now would not be a situation where the 4 emperors stand together. Chapter 367. The 4 Seas Shake. This time, publicly announcing the execution of the captain of the 2nd and 2nd Division of the Whitebeard Pirates has already expressed the Navy's resolute attitude, that is, to go to war. If you dare to come, you will fight. Someone put down the newspaper tremblingly and looked up at the sky, only to feel that the sky seemed to be shrouded in a cloud. If the announcement of the public execution caused an uproar in the world, then there was another news that followed, causing the whole world to set off a storm. This is a newspaper. In this newspaper, the front page occupies the entire page, with only one line of large characters, and every word is so shocking. The beast pirates are destroyed. A few very short words, too short to be too short, each word is enlarged and typeset on the first page of the entire newspaper. The newspaper was sent all over the world by seagulls. Many people who picked up the newspaper were stunned at first, and then they thought that today should not be April Fool's Day, and then they turned to the second page. Then there was a silence. 7 waters, Chambord, Dressrosa. Every island covered by this newspaper fell into a strange silence at that time, and the sound gradually disappeared. 1 moment ago, the Navy and Whitebeard were still fighting, and what kind of turmoil would cause a shudder, but the next moment, but this news, the shock of the mind went blank. July 17, 152 in the circular calendar. God's Kangdu pirates defeated the 100 Beasts pirates in the Kingdom of Harmony. One of the 4 emperors who ruled the sea for 20 years, the 100 Beast Pirates, was destroyed, withdrew from the stage of the sea and became history. And the demise of the Beast Pirates also declared that the 8 gods Kingdo pirates cannot. The rise of resistance, the prelude to the subversion of the entire world, was also completely opened on this day. Somewhere in the sea, the red-haired pirates were drinking, and everyone stopped at this moment. Shanks looked at the newspaper in his hand and was speechless for a long time, and Beckman beside him also had an unprecedented dignified expression on his face. After a long time, Shanks finally sighed and threw the newspaper to the ground. There's no way to stop it. Is no way to stop the rise of the 8 gods Kingdo pirates, and no one can stop it. Coupled with the Navy's declaration of war on Whitebeard, the world has completely turned violent, and what will be next will be a period of chaos that is even more chaotic than the era of the great pirates. This is a general trend and cannot be stopped. Even if he is one of the 4 emperors, in the face of such a situation, he is already powerless to stop it, and he can only watch the rivers and rivers descend. There are not many options left for us. Beckman spoke slowly and said faintly, either fight against this era, or quit here and leave this stage. This battle has not yet begun, but Beckman is very clear that the Whitebeard pirates will lose, and it is impossible to defeat the well-prepared navy, not to mention that Whitebeard is old. And after the defeat of the Whitebeard pirates, there will be a confrontation between 2 major forces in this world. One is the world government, and the other is the 8 gods blue fighting pirates. No. Now, it should be called the nations. Red-haired pirates are also one of the 4 emperors that dominate the sea. They are caught between the world government and the Yagami blue fighting pirates, and there is no room for survival. Philo reminds you, 3 things to read, collect, recommend and share. Chapter 368, Transform Kaido. It's kind of ridiculous. The original New World, the 4 emperors were separated, and when ordinary pirates entered the New World, they would inevitably bump into the 4 emperors, and either choose to join or be destroyed. Only ones who can survive in the New World ruled by the 4 emperors are Chiwahai, but these Chiwahai are just surviving in the cracks. And now, their red-haired pirates were also faced with this situation, and they had to be squeezed into the cracks. How do you choose, Shanks? Beckman took a deep breath and turned to look at Shanks. Shanks came to the deck, looked at the sea from a distance, breathed the sea breeze, looked at the sunset in the sky, and did not speak for a long time. Wano Country, Central City. After the destruction of the Beast's pirates, the Yagami Kingdo pirates took over the entire site of the Beast's pirates, but the whole process of receiving would inevitably have bumps in all aspects. Fortunately, the 8th Division under Wan Guo's command was the clone troop of Germa 66, which could provide enough troops with sufficient resources. As for the 9 Snake Island of the 9th Division, almost all the people are soldiers, and they can also recruit 1 or 2 troops. 3 days have passed since the destruction of the Beast Pirates. The past 3 days, the 8th Division's science troop and the 9th Division's female soldier team have each dispatched a troop to participate in the task of taking over the site of the Beast Pirates, which is already worthy of a rival. With Shiryu of the Rain, Fujitora and others here, there is basically no need for Yagami Sudo to ask about this part of the matter, and every general under his command is capable of acting independently. In the case of the destruction of the Beast Pirates, it is enough to crush all different voices. And at this moment, inside the central palace of Wano Kingdom, this is the deepest hall. As soon as the Yagami Kingdo pirates were destroyed, after the Yagami Kingdo took over this place, it was listed as a forbidden place, including the captain, unless they were allowed to enter. At this moment, in this hall, there are thick chains, all of which are Halu stone chains. These Halu stone chains bind all the surviving Droughtjack and others under the 100 Beast Pirates, all there. Can't move. But, even if they were bound by Halu stone chains, the aura of these people still filled the entire hall with a feeling of depression, as if advancing to the infinite hell on the 6th floor of the city. Aside from Ji and the others, at the very center is a figure as thick as a mountain. It is the Beast Kaido. How? The Murasama in the hands of Yagami Kanto was resting on Kaido's shoulders, and the day tiger suppressed Kaido's body, leaving Kaido in a state of immobility. It is not difficult for him to kill Kaido today, but Kaido's strong fighting power, he naturally will not waste it. He will obliterate Kaido's soul and make it into a strongest puppet. Yagami Kanto's plan. Not yet. Gels was standing in front of Kaido, and he released the power of the healing fruit, trying to pull Kaido's soul out of his body, but the pressure was heavy. At this moment, cold sweat was pouring out of his forehead, and the power of the healing fruit had been fully stimulated, but it was still difficult to strip Kaido's soul. Then go on. Yagami Kangdo's expression remained unchanged, and a strange force emerged from the blade in his hand, stabbed into Kaido's body fiercely. That was the ability of the soul fruit. Kaido's body is too strong, and his soul is almost completely integrated with his body. It is obviously impossible to extract his soul by relying on Jirz's ability alone, otherwise Kaido would have already died. Chapter 369. Deprive Kaido of his soul. But the Yagami Kangdo, who possesses the soul fruit, can use the soul power to continuously weaken Kaido's soul when he has absolute suppression power. From defeating Kaido, to suppressing Kaido, and constantly attacking his soul, more than 2 days have passed so far. During this period, both Yagami Sudo and Gals have been acting here without eating or drinking. Even Yagami Kangdo has to admire Kaido's physique. Although he also has an almost undead body today, which is not much different from Kaido, but if it is purely physical, Kaido is still unmatched. However, while suppressing Kaido and constantly attacking Kaido's soul, Yagami Sudo is also constantly researching the secret of Kaido's body being so powerful, and he has also made a lot of discoveries. In this world, the way to become stronger is to develop the potential of the human body, and for an existence like Kaido, the potential has undoubtedly been almost fully stimulated. It is reasonable to say that its cells should enter a state of inactivation. Can be biased. The flesh and blood in Kaido's body has not been fully tapped because of its potential, and has lost the part of its activity that it should have. Instead, it is far more than ordinary people. Does it increase cell activity? Yagami Kangdo roughly judged the strength of Kaido's body, but to find a way to make his body have the same activity as Kaido, he still needs to take it slow. It can't be done in a while. Under the double suppression of Yagami Kangdo's soul and soul fruit, Kaido didn't even have a chance to wake up, and could only passively endure the damage to his body by Yagami Kangdo. 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours 3. In the blink of an eye, another half-day has passed. Even with the current physique of Yagami Kangdo, I feel a little tired at this moment. After all, he defeated Kaido. After that, Kaido was suppressed here for almost 3 days and 3 nights. A little bit. Gals is also constantly inspiring the ability of mind exchange surgery, trying to extract Kaido's mind from the body. Compared to Yagami Kangdo, his consumption is much smaller, but because his strength is far less than Yagami Kangdo, after 3 days and 3 nights, he has also entered into deep exhaustion. But at this moment, there was no tired look on his face, but a hint of excitement gradually appeared on his face, because he had already felt that Kaido's mind was no longer unshakable, but gradually loosened. It is like a screw that has been welded to death. The welding place is rusted, and the fracture gradually appears. Under the strong twist, it has been able to rotate little by little. Good. Yagami Sudo took a deep breath, held Murasama's sword hilt, and stimulated the power of the soul fruit to the limit, pounding Kaido's soul like waves. Under the constant impact of these 3 days and 3 nights, Kaido's soul has long since shriveled and shrunk, and gradually it is no longer closely connected to the body. Ultimately, with the cooperation of Yagami Kangdo and Jirz's eyes finally shone brightly, and his right hand twitched back fiercely. A heart-shaped thing was pulled out of Kaido's body. It is Kaido's mind. It can also be called the product of soul contraction. Here. When Yagami Kangdo saw Kaido's heart being drawn out, he waved his sleeve decisively, and a mass of black stuff rolled out from his sleeve. It was the incarnation of his soul that he made in advance. Phyllu reminds you, 3 things to read, collect, recommend and share. Chapter 370, Hormes Kaido. Under the ability of Gears, the soul incarnation was compressed into a heart-shaped object, flew into the body of the beast Kaido, and finally disappeared. And at the same time, Yagami Kanto raised the Murasama in his hand and stabbed with a sharp sword, piercing Kaido's soul in the void, and the power of the soul fruit exploded, covering it instantly. Life stripped. Kaido's soul is strong, but it is impossible to fight against the power of the soul and soul fruit. In the face of the power of the soul and soul fruit, he was finally completely deprived of vitality. It was also when Kaido's soul was completely destroyed, and a familiar voice that had not been heard for a long time sounded in the ears of Yagami Soto. The 4 emperors, Kaido of the beasts, have completed the hunt and received a reward of 100 bait. Sure enough, you can get rewards for killing Kaido like this. If before, he was able to steadily outperform the 4 emperors like Kaido, but he couldn't deal with 2 at the same time, then now he, even if he was able to deal with the peak combat power of Garp and Martial Sengoku at the same time, would be enough. In the first battle, even when his current strength is no longer a strong man of this level, and he can carry it alone. At least 2 Garp's combat power can join forces to fight against him. He couldn't reach the interface of the system, but he couldn't help but glance at Yashin Kangdu, and a trace of confusion flashed in his eyes. I don't know if it's an illusion. Yagami Kangdu's breath that should have been sluggish due to exhaustion suddenly became unfathomable again, and seemed to be much stronger than before. It must be an illusion. Gertz finally shook his head. Both of them turned their heads to look at the heavy body of Kaido, the 100 beasts sitting there, just sitting there, motionless, like a dead silence. But at the next moment, Kaido's eyelashes trembled. Yagami Kangta and Gears were both keenly aware of this, and a glimmer of light flashed in their eyes, staring at the face of the beast Kaido. The eyelashes kept shaking, and the eyelids eventually became too high. Beast Kaido looked around blankly, and then noticed Yagami Kangdu, instinctively opened his mouth to Yagami Kangdu, and called out boss. The boss shouted. Yagami Kangta and Gears both breathed a sigh of relief. It seems that there was no accident. Kaido's puppet production was a success. However, of the beast Kaido at the moment is obviously not as good as those of Katakuri's puppets. His movements are a little stiff and rigid, and when he stands up, he stumbles a bit and almost fell. Not far away, seeing the beast Kaido calling out to the Yagami Kangdu boss, and this strange state, Drought Jack, who was awake, couldn't help but slightly widened his eyes. Master Kaido. You guys, what did you do? The General Star Smoji on the other side was also shaken violently when he saw this scene. He vaguely thought of something, and his face couldn't help showing a look of astonishment. Although he didn't know what Gears did, as one of the thieves, former generals, she knew that Yagami Kangdu used the ability of the soul fruit, and what he got out before was the incarnation of the soul. The incarnation of the soul was injected into Kaido's body. But how is this possible? Smoochie's eyes showed disbelief. She knew that the soul extracted from the soul fruit could not be injected into living things, let alone into other things. Human body. Now this scene, except this, the others can't be explained. Kaido's appearance is obviously made into a Hormes. To read the underlined version of the novel, please download the Phyloo novel. Chapter 371, The Incarnation of Beasts. However, but Yagami Kangdu ignored her, instead looking at Beast Kaido, or rather his incarnation of beasts. I can't control my soul incarnation. Of indecision. If Kaido's body was controlled by him, it would be no problem, but the incarnation of the soul was only an incarnation after all, and only possessed part of his will, and it seemed a little difficult to control. No, just a little unfamiliar. 100 Beast Kaido spoke at Yagami Kangta. His voice was still the same as 100 Beast Kaido's. Heavy tone, but his tone was similar to Yagami Kangta. He raised his arm, clenched his fist, then lowered his arm again, and walked around the palace, walking stiffly at first, but becoming smoother and smoother as time went on. That's fine. Yagami Kangdu finally nodded slightly. As long as it can be controlled flexibly, Kaido, the puppet incarnation of the beast, will become the strongest one among his puppets, and even the incarnation of Hurricane is inferior. The undead can be said to be rampant on the battlefield. Congratulations, Lord Yagami Kangdu. Gales stood aside, took a deep breath, and spoke to Yagami Kangdu. He is someone who knows all Yagami Kangdu's puppets and incarnations, and he is also very aware of these. The puppets and avatars controlled by Yagami Kangdu incarnation, what a powerful force. Originally enough to match the 3 major admirals of the Navy, and now with a beast Kaido, it can be said that the power of Yagami Kangdu alone can turn the world upside down in the Navy headquarters. One person. More than one of the 4 Emperor pirates. I am afraid this is unprecedented in the history of the entire sea. Then you will work hard to adapt to the power of the body. 8 gods Kangdu said to the incarnation of the beasts, Kaido's body has no special abilities, the only abnormality is the undead body. And this characteristic also makes his soul incarnation so perfect that he doesn't need to be controlled at all, and how powerful his tricks are, he only needs to be able to raise his fists and fight. Yes. The incarnation of the beasts responded to the 8 gods Kangdu. At this time, Yagami Kangdu finally felt a little tired. Although the tiger has improved a lot, he fought with Kaido, defeated Kaido and suppressed Kaido for 3 days and 3 nights, constantly torturing with the ability of the soul and soul fruit. Kaido's soul, his spirit is also a little sleepy. Don't let people know the existence of the incarnation of the beasts. Yagami Kangdu spoke slowly at Jeers, who was on the side, and glanced at Drought and Smoothie at the same time, and said, the 2 of them are also optimistic. Smoothie aside, the Drought is barely qualified to be his puppet, but he has already cut out the soul incarnation that controls Kaido, and he can't cut another one in a short period of time, at least 1 month. His soul incarnation adapts to Kaido's body and can be controlled flexibly. It will probably take 10 days and a half months. This time is neither long nor short. I understand. Gals nodded at Yagami Kanto. Of course, he knew that the incarnation of the beasts could not be exposed, including the incarnation of the Golden Lion. This was to fight against the combat power of the Navy and the world government. Philo reminds you, 3 things to read, collect, recommend and share. Chapter 372, Go in Person. The moment they appear in the world, whether it is the Navy or the world government, they will all be shocked by the uproar. From the depths of the palace, Yagami Kangta is weary and arrives in a room that has been tidied up by Nina in advance. Inside, lie down on the bed and sleep. I slept nearly 10 hours this night. After waking up, the feeling of tiredness from continuously exerting power for several days and nights finally subsided, and the spirit of Yagami Kangdu was restored to its original state again. Yagami Kangdu walked out of the room and saw Nina, who was reading a book in the hall outside. 10 days. Nina replied while reading a book. For this matter, Yagami Kanto is very attentive. Not about Ace's life or death, it's about his own plans. Yagami Kangdu nodded slightly, a glimmer of light flashed in his eyes, and a heart-pounding smile appeared on his face. He walked to Nina's side, took the juice Nina put on the table and took a gulp. The sight of the beast pirates still needs to be received and managed, and it will take time for the soul incarnation to adapt to Kaido's body. As for the Drought Jack, 10 days later, he will not be able to make a puppet. Top War is not the right time for him to fight the Navy and the world government. However, go to the Navy headquarters and give the Navy and the government a big deal. Surprise, but there is no problem at all. How could he be absent from such a thing as a war? Just as Yagami Kangdu put down the tea with juice, a phone bug suddenly rang. Nina reached into her pocket and found a phone bug. Hello. After answering the phone bug, Nina's expression didn't change. After okay twice, she hung up the phone bug, turned her head to look at Kangdu Yagami, and said, a mermaid was caught by a slave trader on Fishman Island. It's being auctioned at auction in Chambord. Fishman Island is now the site of the Yagami Kangdu pirates, and because of the special status of Shiraishi, he is the Sea King, one of the 3 ancient weapons, so Yagami Kingdo has always paid more attention to the Fishman Island, and the intelligence department under his command also always staring at Fishman Island. Although Jinpei can handle most of the things, if there is something that Jinpei can't handle, they will immediately dispatch the captain to go there. Mermaid. Yagami Kingdo heard Nina's words. He didn't show any surprise. He touched his chin and thought. If I remember correctly, it should be the mermaid named Kemi. Do you want someone to go? Nina asked Soto Yagami. Although a mermaid is nothing, but the slave trader dares to attack the mermaid, which is undoubtedly despising the prestige of the Yagami Kingdo pirates. Iori Kingdo rubbed his neck and said, no need, I'll go there in person. Whitebeard and the Navy headquarters will definitely fight, so I just happened to drop by. Nina walked aside and brought a cup of tea, took a sip and said, who are you planning to take to Wangguo's side, but you haven't settled down yet. Whether the Red Hair pirates will take action, no one knows. The Navy is now fully prepared to fight against Whitebeard, and there will be no action, but the world government must be secretly staring at Wangguo's side. Chapter 373. The plot kills. Don't bring anyone. Yagami Kingdo said casually. The Navy headquarters is not the Holy Land Mary Joa, it is enough to bring the Hurricane Incarnation and the Earth Incarnation. With his current strength, and with the Hurricane Incarnation and the Earthen Puppet of Anilu, it can be said that he has enough combat power to reach the level of a 4 Emperor pirates. Mary Joa and he is right next to the Navy headquarters. Nina said calmly. If you intervene in Whitebeard's battle, there is no guarantee that the world government will not take action, but this is indeed a good time to weaken the Navy and the government. Almost. 8-God Kingdo casually pulled his cloak and put it on, saying, I will leave it to you from Wangguo's side, let a smile take care of it, and I will leave. After the voice fell, Yagami Kingdo walked out of the palace and disappeared. Seeing Yagami Kingdo's back disappearing completely, Nina couldn't help shaking her head slightly. She was not the strongest in terms of strength, but she was the first to follow Yagami Kingdo. She recalled the days when she was struggling in the West Sea, and now she went to the Navy. The headquarters can use the same tone of eating and drinking. Thoughts are flying like a dream. Everything is just like a dream. The Chambord Islands. A figure stepped on a stone platform, flew over smoothly from the sky, and then fell straight down to an island in the Chambord archipelago. At the moment of landing, the stone platform quickly wriggled and turned into an illusion, but then it scattered again, turned into soil and merged into the earth, disappearing. I see. Yagami Kingdo is holding a bug in his hand, and on the other side of the phone bug is Nina. He had just arrived at Chambord, and the news from Nina was that the Straw Hat Gang had beaten the Heavenly Dragons and rescued the mermaid Kemi. Yagami Kingdo was not surprised by this. It's about the same development as the original plot. Yagami Kingdo hung up the phone bug, touched his chin and said thoughtfully. The incarnation of the earth has been transformed into the form of soil and integrated into the ground. As for the incarnation of the hurricane, it has now turned into a small swirling tornado, entwining a strand of Yashin Kingdo's hair, making that strand of hair keep spinning and flying. What is the plot? Hurricane Incarnate asked dumbly. Yagami Kingdo didn't answer its question, but looked towards the island ahead and walked forward. If there is no change in the plot, the Straw Hats will meet Kayabu here, and then be rescued by the Bartholomew Bear, and fly to various islands. However, Yagami Kingdo doesn't want Luffy to be photographed on 9 Snake Island. Addition, the Straw Hats saved the mermaid Kemi, so it would be fine to give them a ride. As the 8 Gods Kingdo walked forward, he spread out the domineering look he saw and heard, and spread to the whole island, but the Chambord archipelago is not a single island, but an archipelago. In addition, the Chambord land is extremely chaotic at the moment. It is quite difficult to find people accurately in such a huge range. Coincidentally, before Iori Kingdo could go further, there was a roar in front of him, which attracted Iori Kingdo to look over and look thoughtful. Philo reminds you, 3 things to read, collect, recommend and share. Chapter 374, Pacifists. Boom. A brilliant golden laser exploded on the ground. Eustace Skid, one of the pirate supernovas, avoided him in embarrassment, but he was still scratched a little, and there was a trace of burns on his abdomen. In his abdomen, and looked forward with a cold face. Just in front of him, a huge figure was standing there, and there was still a little gunpowder on the edge of the corner of his mouth. It was obvious that the laser was released by him. This figure is impressively made in the form of the Shichibukai Bartholomex bear, a special warfare weapon, a pacifist. The bounty is 315 million Bailey, the pirate captain, Eustaski, Germany. Pacifist stared at Eustace and spoke in a mechanical tone. Kid looked at the pacifist in front of him, his face was a little wicked, and said, "Why is the Chihuahua here under the king?" The pacifists at this time have not been made public, and Kid is no stranger to the appearance of Shichibukai, and naturally regards him as the tyrant bear himself. The pacifists do not answer. Its setting program is to capture the pirates and record all the intelligence information of the pirates who have been rewarded. At this moment, Kid has been directly locked. Whoosh! The fat body, with a speed and agility that seriously did not match his appearance, rushed towards Eustace. The palm of his hand gathered bright rays of light, and a laser blasted directly over. Kid's pupils shrank, he turned over quickly, and avoided it to one side. He suffered a small loss just now, and naturally he didn't dare to be careless. However, of the pacifist also made him completely angry. "It seems that you are not going to give way, am I, Big Bear?" As one of the supernovas who conquered the first half of the Great Route, Kid naturally also has his arrogance. Although the journey is not as gorgeous as Luffy, it is only Chihuahua, but it is impossible to be afraid of Chihuahua. Ah! 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 Kid let out a low shout, and saw countless knives, guns and firearms, all attracted by some kind of force, gathered into two huge arms, and hammered the pacifist fiercely. He is the power of the superhuman magnetic fruit, and has the power to use magnetism to attract and control all steel. Boom! This blow sent the pacifists flying backwards. Kid sneered and prepared to walk past. "Wait, Kid." Before Kid turned to walk away, a voice came from behind him. Apu, who is also one of the supernovas, looked at the direction of the pacifist who was blown away by Kid with great interest, and said, "It's not over yet." Just as Apu's voice fell, the dust dissipated, and the pacifist stood there unscathed, his eyes twinkling like lights. His gaze fell on Apu. "The bounty is 260 million to Bailey, the pirate captain," the disc sound Apu. Quote. Kid's face looked a little gloomy, he failed to beat the pacifist to the ground, and the other party's attention was still on Apu next to him, which made his face a bit unbearable. "This guy is so strange. He doesn't look like a human being." Apu watched the pacifists with great interest, and seeing that the pacifists' eyes returned to Kid, he couldn't help tilting his head and said, "Is it transforming people? According to the bounty, choose the first target to attack." Kai. Almost at the moment when Apu's voice fell, the pacifist opened his mouth and sprayed out 3 laser beams in succession, which focused on Kid. Kid waved his hand with a cold face, and countless scattered swords and guns gathered in front of him, blocking the bombardment of the laser. Chapter 375. Is it that person? Countless pieces of debris splattered everywhere in the explosion. But at the same time, more fragments gathered frantically, and finally turned into a larger arm, hammering the pacifist fiercely. After taking this trick, no one can stand up again. Boom! The roaring sound exploded in the field. I saw that the pacifist who was directly bombarded by Kid was embedded in the ground, like a radish, and there was a wound on his head, and blood was flowing from it, but at the same time, it could be vaguely seen that the damaged interior was a machine, and non-skeletal. Humph! Kid snorted coldly, lost his ability, and planned to leave. But Apu tilted his head and said strangely, "You just left like this. How could Chihuahua be killed by you so easily? It's too confident." Boom! Almost at the moment when Apu's voice fell, the ground showed signs of cracking, and the pacifist drilled out of the pit, and directed at Kid. A laser. Although this laser Kid avoided, the aftermath still hit him, causing him to fly out in a daze, and his back slammed into the wall. "Oh, is it my turn?" Apu looked at the pacifist and grinned when he saw that the other party blasted Kid and turned his head in his direction. Of course, it is impossible to be afraid. To his level, they are all lawless pirates, but the enemy in front of him is also quite difficult in his opinion. But just when he put on a stance, ready to deal with it, the pacifist in front of him suddenly turned his head 90 degrees, looking in a direction to the right, his eyes flickering like a flash of light. This scene made Apu take a moment, and Kid, who broke free from the wall, also subconsciously followed the gaze of the pacifist. The pacifist did not speak, but directly probed and fired a laser. The laser exploded in the distance, as if it had hit something, and the dust spread out. The target of the attack has changed again. Apu showed a strange expression. He guessed that the transformed man in front of him was something like a weapon. He would give priority to attacking people with higher bounties and higher threats, but now he suddenly shifted his attack target. That is to say, in that direction, there is a person who is more threatening than him and Kid. Is it that Hades, Rayleigh and Kid were both at the auction site, saw Luffy punch a flying dragon, the scene of people, and also a melee with the navy for this, and also saw Rayleigh's appearance in the middle. And just when Apu's eyes were indecisive, he saw that the dust gradually dissipated, and a figure came out from the smoke. "Hello." Yagami Kingta strolled out of the dust, looked at the pacifist, and said, "I said, didn't Vegapunk set up a program for you that prohibits taking action against pirates with a bounty of more than 1 billion? The pacifist and Kidap were fighting here, and he had already sensed it one step ahead, but he didn't intend to pay attention to it at all. Unexpectedly, just as he passed by, the pacifist blasted over with a laser, which made Yagami Aoto a little unhappy. "Hey, it's true. That guy, could it be?" The pirates under Kid and Apu saw the figure of Yagami Kingdu appear. They were all stunned for a moment, and then all their expressions changed drastically, only to feel that their foreheads were all overflowing with cold sweat. Even Apu and Kid's expressions changed at this moment. Philo reminds you, 3 things to read, collect, recommend and share. Chapter 376, The Strongest in the World. In a silence, pacifist turned around and stared at Yagami Kingdu, and said mechanically, "The bounty is 3 billion Baileys, Pirate Captain, Yagami Kingta." Although the tone was the same as the bounty that Kid and Apu had read before, it was the kind of emotionless mechanical synthesis, but this sentence still made Apu, Kid and others feel a storm in their hearts. Yagami Kanto. It's really him. How could he appear here? The strongest in the world. Kid had a trace of cold sweat on his forehead, even with his rebelliousness. When he looked at the figure of Yagami Kingdu, he couldn't help but feel a slight tremor in his body, and even if he took a deep breath, he couldn't calm down. The man standing at the top of the sea. Kai. Before Kid and the others could react more, the pacifist opened his 2 hands, and the dazzling rays of light in the palms converged into 2 lasers. He blasted towards Yagami Kingdu from a distance. But under the gaze of Kid and Apu, facing 2 lasers with great power, Yagami Kingdu just raised his hand and pressed it in the void. Silently. Were frozen in the void as if time stood still. Yagami Kingdu's eyes were flat, and the 5 fingers of his palm were closed, and he just grabbed at the pacifist in the distance. Crackle. I saw the entire void in front of me, suddenly distorted and deformed. The pacifist body that had endured 2 full-strength attacks from Kid and still did not suffer much damage, under this force, like a piece of paper, was squeezed kneed. The entire body was rapidly deformed, and an invisible big hand grabbed it, and then kneaded it fiercely. In a burst of sparks, it was completely turned into a piece of scrap metal. Watching this scene, whether it was Apu or Kid, their faces were horrified, their breathing was almost stagnant, and their backs were soaked with cold sweat. How could it be? A single blow from the 7 Wuhai At this moment, the subordinates of Kid and Apu were all covered in cold sweat, and their eyes were full of disbelief. Even the captains of Kid and Apu were shocked. Instant kill. Kibukai Tyrant Bear was killed in one blow. This is the strength of the strongest man in the world. Yagami Kingta crushed the pacifist with one hand, and slowly retracted his palm. Only then did he turn his head to look at Kid and Apu not far away, and there was a hint of indifference in his eyes. He had no grievances with the two, but the two were rebellious and wantonly massacred civilians. A skin with a skin in it, he likes the skin very much, but he doesn't like it very much. This generation of supernovae is of such poor quality. Yagami Kingdu raised his head slightly and opened his mouth somewhat loosely. As early as when Yagami Kingdu looked over, Apu and Kid had an inexplicable thump in their hearts. Hearing Yagami Kingdu's words at this time, there is a feeling of cold hair standing up. And at the next moment, Yagami Kanto stood there and said the second half of the sentence. Quote, "The quality is so poor, so do ain't go to the new world to be ashamed." Yagami Kingdu lifted his foot and stepped lightly, and a roar erupted from the entire ground. Kid and Apu, together with their subordinates, swayed. In an instant, the footing was unstable, and all of them showed a terrified color. Not good. Go. Of them almost gave up their plans to fight Yagami Kingta without thinking about it. Chapter 377, The Strongest Attack. Turned around decisively, and after barely stabilizing his body, he wanted to run away. Yagami Kingdu didn't pay any attention to the two fleeing. I saw his casual 5 fingers folded into a fist, and a group of day tigers condensed on his fist, and he waved lightly in the direction of Kid and Apu. The surging day tiger burst out brazenly. This is the power of Yagami Kingdu who killed Kaido, the beast, and the power of the day tiger that is beyond the past. Even Yagami Kingdu himself doesn't know how powerful his full-strength punch is now. So his punch was just a random wave of his hand, just like an ordinary person throwing a punch against the air at will. Boom. It's like destroying the dry and pulling the rot, in general. Kid and Apu both sensed the terrifying force coming from behind, and they did their best to resist and roar. But he couldn't hold it for even half a second, and it was shattered like a rotten tree. By the distortion of the air continued to fly towards the rear, and finally bombarded a mangrove tree. Bang! In the middle of the huge mangrove tree, a terrifying distortion appeared, and it collapsed and shattered at a speed visible to the naked eye. Ultimately, the huge mangrove tree was shattered in half by the twisting fist of Yagami Kingdu, leaving an obvious fist-shaped hole. Looking at the half-shattered Alchiman mangrove tree, Yagami Kingta retracted his fist and scratched his hair. Kacha! Kacha! The alchemy mangrove tree is broken in half, and the remaining half can support it to continue to build. From the cracked part, the sound of crackling gradually appeared, and there were traces of cracks little by little. The entire alchemy mangrove tree collapsed to one side under the shocked and horrified gazes of countless people. Ah, no. Alchiman mangrove again. Kazuna-sama is too messed up. Some navies on the distant islands, seeing this scene, couldn't help but feel their scalps numb, and their hands covered their heads with sweaty hands. Because the Tianlong people were beaten, the admiral must be dispatched. So Kyabu personally rushed over, and as soon as he came, he kicked off a one Alchiman mangrove tree. One was broken in the alchemy mangrove tree, and naturally they thought it was the yellow ape. Even if Mr. Kizaru is a general, kicking off 2 Alchiman mangroves will be condemned by the world government. Those under Huang Yuan's command, the major generals and the captains, all have helpless expressions on their faces at this moment. At the same time, on the other side, the Straw Hats also encountered the pacifists. A group of people fought together, but they were still beaten by pacifists. Battle was extremely fierce and difficult, and the dazzling laser was continuously shot, causing explosions everywhere. A pacifist can be regarded as a strong discriminator, and it is almost difficult for a supernova that has not yet stepped into the new world to fight against it. Even if we can win, it is all teamwork, and we can only win if we fight extremely fiercely and embarrassedly. But for those in the New World, the bounty is over 340 million, and they will use domineering powerhouses. The strength of pacifists is very general, and they can basically deal with it easily. Devil's Foot. The finishing touch. Ghost Chi 9 Swords Flow, Asura. Magic 9 Flashes. Third Gear. Giant Roundabout. The three main members of the Straw Hat Pirates, Sanji, Zoro and Luffy, joined hands to unleash the strongest attack. Philo reminds you, 3 things to read, collect, recommend and share. Chapter 378, Icanthus Split. Boom. Under the attack of the 3 strongest attacks, the pacifist, who had been bruised and bruised, finally heard the sound of broken parts inside. The body was also beaten and twisted, and the whole body was embedded in the ground, and it could no longer move. After this blow, Luffy turned into a little Luffy, panting with his tongue out. Zoro and Sanji also had their chests heaving and panting violently, and they were already close to their limits. Not moving. It's amazing, Zoro. Luffy. Usopp was also panting in relief. Sanji lit a cigarette and said while breathing, "Hey, we have to find a place to take a good rest, and if we continue to fight, there will be no need for an admiral to come over, and some of us here will die." I agree. Nami was also a little embarrassed at the moment. Luffy gradually recovered, and he also knew that he and his companions were powerless to fight anymore, and stuck out his tongue. It makes sense. But wait for me for a while. And just as Luffy's group's breathing gradually calmed down, the sound of heavy footsteps suddenly came from a distance. Everyone's breathing suddenly stagnated, and their bodies turned their heads stiffly. I saw another identical pacifist walking out from behind the ruins. What a joke. Another one. Sanji and the others saw this scene, their faces changed drastically, and Usopp and others even showed horror and fear. No way. Nami was holding the weather stick, her pupils contracted violently at this moment, and she said in disbelief, "How many of these guys are there?" "Dee." The pacifists locked Luffy and the others' palm. The dazzling rays of light converged, and a laser suddenly came over. "Damn. We have to retreat, Luffy." Sanji avoided this blow and said to Luffy in the distance, "No matter what this guy is, we are no longer able to fight, and if we continue to fight, we will die. Everyone can't stay together, let's run away separately." Luffy also knew the priorities of the matter, barely avoiding a laser and speaking to the crowd. Bounty 300 million Bailey, Pirate Captain, Straw Hat Luffy. The pacifist locked Luffy, his eyes flickered like a light bulb a few times. Immediately, he rushed towards Luffy, and his palms continued to emit lasers. Luffy avoided embarrassedly, and fled with everyone. Nirvana. Smoke bomb. Usopp gritted his teeth, picked up his slingshot, and hit the pacifist with a smoke grenade. Immediately after creating a piece of gunpowder smoke. "Turn around and run away." "Well done, Usopp." Sanji and the others saw this and immediately. Chi escaped. But the smoke didn't have much effect on the pacifist, it jumped out of the smoke and continued to chase after Luffy. A laser hit, even if Luffy avoided the front, he was still surrounded by the aftermath and flew backwards. Luffy. Sauron saw this scene from a distance, and could not help but grit his teeth slightly. "I want to help, but I really don't have the strength to fight anymore." But before he could make any choice, a voice came from in front of him. "You still have the heart to care about others, Nanaroa, Zoro." Zoro's pupils shrank violently, and he didn't react at all, and one foot was already kicked over. Kicked him upside down and flew out. Boom! The ground exploded, Sauron coughed up blood, and he was bruised all over with one move. Sauron. When Luffy and the others saw this scene from a distance, they couldn't help but tear their eyes apart. Looking at the figure who attacked Zoro, they all showed gnashing expressions. In the smoke of gunpowder, the figure of the yellow monkey was revealed. 370th Ix. Hades Rayleigh. He's gone. Kizaru stood there, with his hands in his trouser pockets. His eyes glanced at Sauron, who had fallen to the ground, and said, "Sauron, a pirate hunter with a bounty of 120 million. Why did he change from a pirate hunter again? As for the pirates, it really brings back bad memories." Huang Yuan narrowed his eyes, with a faint trace of frost on his face, and said slowly, "You fell to the ground after just one blow. It seems that your injury is not serious. Take a good rest." When the voice falls, he raised his foot directly, and the bright light gathered. 4. This kind of pirate hunter turned into a pirate. Kizaru is very disliked now, and God knows if there will be another existence that can't be dealt with in the end. If you can kill it, it is best to kill it as soon as possible. Sauron. Seeing this scene next to Usopp and Brook, they couldn't help crying out in horror. Seeing that Sauron had no ability to evade, they couldn't help but show horror. Sanji in the distance also changed his face, gritted his teeth and said, "No, that idiot's body has reached its limit." Shit. Usopp picked up the slingshot while clenching his teeth, and shot a projectile at Kizaru, but it penetrated directly through Kizaru's body. At the same time, Brook also rushed forward and stabbed with a sword. The sword also pierced through Kizaru's body, but it failed to pierce any substance. It can't be stabbed. What's going on? Both of them continued to attack with panicked faces, but they were all useless. Huang Yuan narrowed his eyes, and said slowly in a vulgar tone, "It's useless. This old man is a shining man who ate the shining fruit, and he belongs to nature. I'll take you on your way." Kazuna narrowed his eyes, lifted his feet and slammed down. But just at the critical moment, a sword light suddenly broke through the air, swept across the battlefield in an instant, and slashed towards Kizaru's body. The yellow monkey's complexion changed slightly, and it was too late to kill him immediately. Probe for a grasp. Transformed into a sword blade emitting bright golden light, blocking the sword light that came. Chang. Light splashed. Kyabu blocked the attack, but Zoro was also saved. "It's your turn to appear. Hades Rayleigh." Kizaru squinted his eyes and looked at Rayleigh, the underworld king, who was walking in the distance with his sword in hand. Now that the Navy headquarters is going to deal with the Whitebeard pirates, he has no idea about Pluto Rayleigh. It is impossible for the Navy to deal with two legends at the same time. If they capture the Hades Rayleigh, they will attract the red-haired Shanks, and finally add a Yagami Kangdu. Then I am afraid that the Navy headquarters will be completely turned into a pot of porridge. I am afraid that the Navy of the Three Emperors battle will really become history. I heard that you were on this island many times, but it turns out to be true. Kizaru watched Rayleigh speak slowly. Rayleigh walked to the front of the yellow monkey step by step, and said, "If you abolish the wanted order, then I will be able to support my life here." Kizaru narrowed his eyes and said, "How can the sins of the pirates be written off, let alone the Roger pirates?" Oh. When Rayleigh heard Kyabu's words, he showed a thoughtful look, and said, "If you don't mention me, I forgot that someone seems to be in this situation because of your refusal to abolish the wanted order." Yellow Ape. Heartbroken. To come here to support these. Brat, it seems that you pirates' habits have not changed, but to deal with you, even we have to be fully prepared. Kizaru didn't want to talk about that topic, so he tilted his head to look at Rayleigh. Philo reminds you, 3 things to read, collect, recommend and share. Chapter 380, Unlucky Yellow Ape. Rayleigh held the sword and said, "Well, can you give me a face and let them go, brother Yellow Monkey? Just forgive me." Huang Yuan raised his head slightly and said, "These boys have beaten the Tianlong people. If we don't arrest them, our naval headquarters will not be able to raise their heads in front of the Tianlong people in the Holy Land Mary Joa. Can you not get in the way?" The scene fell into a stalemate for a while. But just seconds later, 2 more pacifists appeared. From the other side, 3 pacifists sandwiched Luffy and his group. This scene made Rayleigh's eyes twinkle, and a heart gradually sank. Although a pacifist is a thing that can be instantly killed with a single sword, but in this situation, it is already the limit for him to block Kizaru, and it is impossible to support Luffy and others. Kizaru also knew this very well, so he confronted Rayleigh like this, not in a hurry. At this time, Luffy and the others, who were surrounded by 3 pacifists in the center, were also in a cold sweat. One of them is so difficult to fight, how can 3s fight? But just when the situation was almost rigid and solidified, a voice suddenly came. These boys saved a mermaid. If I don't let them go, I, Yashin Kangdu, will have no prestige in front of the mermaids on Fishman Island. Can you not get in the way? There was a hint of playfulness in this voice, without the slightest sense of heaviness. But when it came, the expressions of Kizaru and Rayleigh changed. Kazuna was shocked, and Rayleigh was also shocked. But compared to Kazuna, Rayleigh felt relieved after being surprised. I didn't expect him to come. Since he is here, it should be fine. Rayleigh knew that Fishman Island was Yagami Kingpan, and also knew that Luffy and others rescued the mermaid Kemi, and the reason why Luffy beat the Tianlongren was also caused by the mermaid Kemi being caught. Ah, it's that uncle. When Luffy saw the figure of Yagami Kingdu from a distance, he suddenly let out a loud snort. Yagami Soto fell into deep thought. Before you know it, are you already an uncle-level figure? When I saw the appearance of Yagami Kingdu, except for Luffy's carefree sound, Zoro, Sanji, and the others almost all looked stiff, and their expressions were middling. It looks a little unnatural. However, compared to the yellow ape, they are much better. The yellow monkey was sitting on the wax at this time. Originally, he was in a relaxed and happy mood and came here to deal with a few furry children. As a result, a Pluto Rayleigh came out to save the field, and then Iori Kingdu actually appeared. This is why I went out without seeing the news that Agami Kingdu killed the beast pirates. As a result, I actually appeared in the Chambord archipelago. Could it be that I was interested in their next war with Whitebeard? Thinking of this, the back of Kyabu felt a chill, and the more I thought about it, the more bad it felt. An old face unknowingly appeared. It has been twisted into a bitter gourd shape. And at this time, the 3 pacifists don't care who Yagami Kingta is. They are all mechanically transformed people, and the set procedure is to catch the pirates, only to see each make a sound of beep, and then follow the order, attack Luffy and the others. Boom, boom, boom. 3 laser beams suddenly bombarded from 3 directions, and the blasted Luffy and the others screamed strangely, evading embarrassingly in all directions. Nami also screamed, and although she jumped up, she was still shocked by the aftermath, and the whole person flew into the sky, and the direction of the backward flight happened to be on the side of Yagami Kingdu. To read the underlined version of the novel, please download Fei Lu's novel.